I don't know why I thought it was weird that Shavuot was more than one thing. Or rather, it started as one thing, but now it's mostly something else, but still sometimes, somehow, is still that other thing that it was in the first place. That it seems that most people only know it as one of its identities, that folks don't know its history. Maybe most people don't even know about it at all. That shouldn't be surprising, because no one and no thing is ever only one thing.
What a complicated question. So hard to boil down in 4 or 5 minutes.
I wrote this as I was sitting on a bench in a park. To me, it's a bench. It's just wood and metal and some bird poop. Thankfully, it's dry bird poop. It's a place to sit, to have a moment of quiet repose on a sunny day. To me. To someone else, it might be none of those things.
Funny enough, I was just asked this not too long ago. Not specifically that question, but related. To a certain degree, I anticipated it. Because that happens all the time. That's a very regular thing in my life. Maybe not so much... no. Pretty much throughout my entire life, people have asked me...
my identity.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hello.
My name is Noah Keyishian. I'm an actor, a philosopher.
I am Connie. I am an actor.
My name is Juliana Aiden Martinez, and I'm Jewish.
My name is Nemuna Ceesay. My pronouns are she, her, hers.
A dog enthusiast. A mathematician.
I am an actor, an educator.
A writer, songwriter, filmmaker based in New York.
I am mixed.
An acting coach.
I am Latina.
I am a sister. I am a daughter. I'm a friend.
An astrophysicist. And a son.
I come from a mixed marriage family. Doesn't make sense, but
I am biracial. My mother is Jewish. My father is Muslim from the Gambia in West Africa.
my mother is Jewish, and our family came from Poland, Lithuania, and my father is indigenous Colombian. They decided to settle into Miami, which is where I was born.
I'm originally from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and
Here we are, over the screen again. So great to be here.
I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how my identity has changed in the past several years.
I am so many things, which I think really pertains to what I'm here to talk about today.
I guess I'm going to talk about how my identity has changed over the years. I was trying to figure out the best way to do this.
My identity has profoundly changed throughout my life.
I mean, identity is such a multifaceted, complicated word.
This is my apartment. Welcome. Currently living in La Jolla, California, where I'm studying to get my MFA in acting from UC San Diego.
I had a really very privileged, really wonderful childhood in a lot of ways, but a really confusing one.
I grew up very unsure of my identity. I am mixed. My mom was born and raised in China. She came here in her early 30s.
I'm originally from Sacramento, California. I'm now based in New York City, but I grew up in Sacramento, and I mostly grew up with my white Jewish mother.
My dad is from Philadelphia, and he's Jewish, and
my white stepfather and my white half-sister, Molly.
My mom was not very connected to our relatives, and so my grandmother and grandfather was all that I had.
I grew up kind of in a mix of traditions.
And so my very first memories of even childhood is like being in synagogue with my grandma, my grandfather.
And I would see my dad, who, like I mentioned, is West African, on the weekends until he moved away in middle school. And I mention this because I think that's a huge reason why I was so confused about my identity growing up.
You know, we had a menorah and celebrated Hanukkah. We also had a Christmas tree and celebrated Christmas because my parents were like, well, it's easier to give them presents on one morning. So definitely agnostic religiously, but culturally always kind of searching for what my identity could be.
And then my grandfather died of leukemia. And my father, during my childhood, was really stern, and he kind of dictated where we went as a family religiously. So we jumped from churches to church. So I had gone to Pentecostal church, Jehovah's Witness for a period of time, Catholic, Baptist. And I remember being in specific Christian churches. There was like a born-again Christian church I was at for a time.
Yeah, growing up second generation, queer, a middle child.
I remember someone saying, you know, it's the Jews who killed Jesus. So it's the Jews' fault. And if you're Jewish, like, you're not allowed here. And I remember, I think I was like 11. I think I was like 11 at the time, and like sitting in church and being like, oh my God, like I'm a terrible person. I'm a terrible person. I'm not Jewish. I don't want to be connected to my mother. I don't want to be connected to my family.
It took me time to feel comfortable in not knowing, honestly. And now I have definitely started to embrace
being like a mixed kid.
My hair is big again. It's possible that my hair hasn't been this big since high school.
High profile schools with mostly white kids. And I really tried to assimilate, and I really tried to fit in.
The folks that haven't seen me since high school might look at me now and think that I haven't changed a bit. They'd be wrong, but they'd also be right.
Most of my family that I spent most of my time with, the people who really took care of me, were white. I had a really hard time connecting to my blackness growing up.
What are you? Or where are you from? But where are your parents from? Yeah, but are they, you know, that kind of stuff. So I'm very used to it. But one of the first, you know, I knew eventually it was going to come up here. Every time I get into a new space, it always comes up. And it was from one of my professors who wanted to get a better idea of how I identified for casting in some of the department shows and whatnot.
Until I was in graduate school in 2011, I didn't really have any black friends.
Because specifically, I think in other cultures, in like Latino cultures or other cultures, even of color, there is perceptions of what it is to be Jewish. And me, even coming from Miami, which is a really black and brown community of like Caribbean and Latino melting pot, there are just a lot of perceptions of what it is to be Jewish and what it is to not be Jewish. And I definitely remember feeling ashamed in like being Jewish and like people making jokes.
That's when things started to kind of burst open, as things do in drama school. And I started to realize that there was a lot that I was suppressing, a lot that I didn't understand about myself that I needed to, a lot of trauma that needed to be figured out. And, you know, I'm still working through that every single day. I had a really kind of hard relationship with my father for a long time. I went to Gambia for the first time and the only time in 2009, and that was a really hard experience for me, feeling like I'm biracial and don't fit in there in the same way that I don't fit in here.
Me then versus me now. We're both nerds, geeks, overly and overtly enthusiastic about very specific things. But old me, young me, was a geek when being a geek was not exactly going to improve your social life. But now nerds are cool. So I guess in that regard, I didn't change. But the world around me did. And in turn, my relationship with my passionate geekdom, and maybe that's redundant, passionate geekdom, has shifted. Now I can be loud and proud instead of testing the waters with each relationship to see if that very important part of me was acceptable.
It's been a lot of growing and a lot of evolving. And kind of on the flip side of that, like I mentioned, my mother is Jewish. My whole family on my mother's side came from Galicia, which was Poland, I think is now in Austria. And my mom grew up very Jewish, practicing, and then she really rebelled against it when she, got out of her house, as my father did with the Muslim religion. And so I didn't grow up with any religion, but I knew that I was Jewish, and we would celebrate Hanukkah.
And also being like, and I'm still a part of my dad's family, and there's still a loyalty and understanding there. And it wasn't until probably my grandmother died when I was a little older that she was the last relative that I had from my mom. And it was a defining moment for me, because I was like, that's it. Like, I'm done. That's it. I need to know what it is to be Jewish for me.
I remember wanting to go further in that. Many of the students that I went to school with, my peers, were Jewish in my community. And I remember feeling like I wish that I could, delve more deeply into that, but I never felt like I could, because I was Black and I didn't know any Black Jews. None of my peers who were Jewish were Black, and I didn't really even know where to start. For a long time, I wanted to go to Birthright, but again, it just felt like I wasn't ready to really open myself up to what that would mean.
And I signed up for Taglit, and I went to Israel, and I was there for about 10 days. And I remember specifically being in Jerusalem, and when I saw the wall.
I'm a true believer that, all of our generations live inside of us. Our ancestors live in our bones, our ancestors live in our blood. The traumas that they went through live in our genes.
And I just stopped and I started sobbing. It was like this primitive, ancestral, spontaneous sob that came from my body, where I felt everything and being like, I don't know, like an ancestral calling, kind of like a whale song from like far away, and that like you're here and you're meant to be here. And I just started sobbing.
And still to this day, I'm not practicing, but I always tell people that I'm Jewish. It feels like a very important part of me, even though I truly still don't really know what that means for myself.
Just the multifacetedness of my identity and how it continues to change, how the more I learn about my mother's side of the family, the more connected I feel to my Chinese roots. The more I ask about my dad's side of the family, the more I feel connected to those roots.
And it was like a very particular moment I had in my life in which I felt and I recognized myself as Jewish. And throughout time, even after that experience, it's been me taking what it is to be Jewish in my own hands and like what feels right to me, who is also a highly spiritual person and someone that prays a lot, but also
I spent a lot of time being concerned with acceptable.
Part of the reason I think people just have a hard time when they see me.
Which lunch table to sit at.
Especially now that I'm older.
I would say which party to go to, but let's be real. High school me, nerdy, big hair, multiracial me was not going to any parties anyway.
Maybe it's because people feel like they can directly address me and ask me these questions. But I always feel like that's one of the first things that people think and want to ask when they meet me. It's similar to if you see someone who's really tall, you're like, oh, you're really tall. You must play basketball. I feel like it's similar to that thing. It's like, whoa, your identity is confusing. You are so ethnically ambiguous. What are you?
Being Black and Jewish, bluish, was a lot for certain people to accept. I mean, it was a lot for me to accept sometimes.
I was picking up on a perceived inability to comprehend my identity. I think I compensated by trying to put myself into boxes for people, easily digestible boxes for people, so that it was easier for people to just be like, oh, okay, he checks off this box and this box. Great, we can move on.
Never black enough for the black kids. Always a fun novelty to the, in parentheses, white Jewish kids. Always the only bluish kid around. I didn't know code shifting was a thing. It was just how I lived. Survived, thrived, hid.
But it was a little frustrating. Again, I feel like I'm at a point in my life where I'm tired of having to check off boxes for people just in casual conversation.
And now, yet again, the world around me has changed. Diversity, inclusion, intersectionality.
I feel like I can be black and Jewish, and
there's room for me at the table.
All these things all at once, and I don't have to compartmentalize it. I don't have to categorize myself for other people to make other people feel more comfortable.
For so long, I didn't even know that there was a table in the first place. But I too have changed. I don't care about acceptable.
I think moving forward, part of me wants to give people the courtesy of feeling uncomfortable and living in that without me providing them an answer immediately.
Fuck acceptable.
Defies people's expectations of what it is to be Jewish and also Latina.
How that fits into the workplace. That's a conversation that is not often had. It's kind of swept under the rug, and no one talks about it. No one addresses it. Casting in this industry, there's this call for authenticity. And so what does that mean? What does that really mean?
I can't really explain it, but sometimes people say, oh, you don't look Jewish, or you don't sound Jewish, or you didn't go to synagogue and you're not really Jewish.
And how do I fit into that? In being someone who is mixed, someone who is black, someone who is Jewish, someone who identifies as both of those things.
And then I just tell them, it doesn't matter what you say, I'm Jewish.
There is no black enough. There is no Jewish enough. I'm black, I'm Jewish. That's enough.
That's amazing. It's amazing to claim your identity for yourself, regardless of someone else's expectations of what you're supposed to be.
And I think identity can be something that we are constantly exploring and learning about, and it can grow as we grow.
As a person of color, someone who is mixed, that I have taken what it is to be Jewish for me, and it being my identity, and a byproduct of my parents and how I grew up, and that I can be container for both. And they don't even necessarily have to be mutually exclusive, but that they inform each other in a really beautiful way.
And include more and more things.
And so I guess it makes sense that even though I've never been practicing Jew, I still feel like it's a part of me. And as I feel like my, Africanness, my West African heritage is a part of me, even though I've only been to West Africa once.
We're all just amalgamations of the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves.
That's been the most important thing for me to learn, not to limit myself to what I think I should be.
Basically, we believe the stories we tell about ourselves.
Instead, I can really embrace all the things that I want to be.
It's how our brains work. It's how they're designed to work.
Slowly releasing myself from those shackles of shame and embracing it in a way that's really beautiful, that I can see someone, and when I recognize that they are Jewish, they are like inherently a part of my community, and I'm a part of theirs.
No one is only ever one thing.
So yeah, that's so far what it means to me to be Jewish.
Anyway, thank you for having me. It's been a joy rambling about something that I still don't have the answers to. Even though I've been thinking about it for 26 plus years. Still don't have any type of answers. Just kind of accepted that at this point.
And so I'm still on the journey. I'm figuring it out, and I can't wait to see where I'll be in 10 years with all of this. Thank you for listening to my story. It's been a pleasure to share.